Hey, everybody. Carrie Ann King here again with another edition of Tell Me Your Secrets, which is one of the lovely shows that is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. And I am beyond thrilled today that Susan Wiggs has decided to come over and join us. Hi, Susan.
I'm waving from Bainbridge Island, Washington. So,
are you really on Bainbridge?
Yes. If you join us, please tell us in the chat where you're broadcasting from or where you're joining from.
Right. I had no idea you were on Bainbridge Island. I'm also in Washington. I'm internal. I'm north of Spokane.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Small Townsville. I live in Colville.
Oh, okay.
So how's the air where you are? Do you still have smoke there?
We had the first couple days of this week were those Northwest days that make everybody want to move here. You know, it's like, oh my God, I can see Mount Rainier, like I can touch it and the sky is perfect. And then last night, some smoke from California moved into the weather system. And so it's warm, but it's a little bit overcast. And that, it kind of changes your mood, but this should pass as the last wave did. So hopefully we'll be back to amazing, spectacular fall weather.
Right. I'm lucky here. We're clear right now. Fingers crossed that it stays that way. But yeah, I mean, when the sky gets all smoky like that and the sun is red, it's like, it's totally, it's apocalyptic, isn't it? And it does affect your mood.
There's something uniquely oppressive about smoke, even when it doesn't smell like smoke. There's some sort of quality of the light and the air that it's just oppressive. And on days like that, I feel like I'm kind of, I don't know, lucky to be able to stay inside. Maybe I pull the drapes and I just disappear into my book and try to write about a gorgeous day in, I don't know, Florida, California, or wherever I happen to be setting the book that I'm working on.
Isn't that one of the awesome things about being an author, that you get to kind of change the world, right?
We create our own reality.
We do.
Yeah,
I do. I know I do. So I'm so delighted to have you here today. And Susan, how many books have you actually written?
Kerry, this is, thank you for saying approximately. I stopped counting. It was making me feel old. It's like, oh my God, do you have no life at all? I got up to 50 and I thought, oh, what have I been doing for the last 30 years? And then I think, oh, well, it's been 30 years. I've been at it. I was a part-time writer, part-time teacher. When I first got started, I sold my first book in 1987 and published it. And I've published a book or two every year since. So I guess it's not too obsessive to say that it's like maybe 60, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it depends on how you count. Do you count novellas? Do you count short stories? Do you count anthologies? So, but legitimate novels, several dozen for sure.
For sure. That is very impressive. And you've had an amazing career. You've been on all of the big lists and you have just done really awesome and wonderful things. But today we want to talk about the new book. So I know you have a copy that you can show us because we talked about that. So look at the colors of the books on that cover.
We could talk about the cover.
Yeah, let's do that.
About it. I have with my publisher, in my contract with my publisher, I have something called cover approval, meaning they show me the artwork that they want to put on the cover, and then I can say, thumbs up, thumbs down. The problem is I'm not a graphic artist and I don't necessarily have the best taste. And so I really do rely on my editor and my publicist and my agent and, the whole team to sort of chime in and decide how a book is going to go out into the world. What feels like this story? What does it, and it's a kind of a remarkable synergy between the book's content, which a shopping, browsing reader doesn't have any clue about, and what grabbing art, what's going to catch somebody's eye as they're browsing through the bookstore. If you see this in the bookstore, are you going to say, oh, that's pretty, I'm intrigued, I want to pick it up? Or do you think, eh? And so with this book, there were several iterations, and a lot of them were kind of they were good efforts, but they were kind of underwhelming. And it's a tricky thing because it makes you feel for your publisher. When we turn our books in, somebody's got to say, your baby is not totally pretty just yet. You need to go work on it some more. And it's the same way with a piece of cover art. And so indeed, there were several iterations that didn't quite capture not just the essence of the book, but the browser's eye as well, the browsing reader's eye. And they also have to think now about, what is the thumbnail going to look like? Because a lot of us, the first glimpse that we get of a book is we see it online in miniature or even on our phones. And so it has to look in all these formats. And so they're looking for impact. And we had a good baseline because I had a previous book. I think it's here. Oh, my book that was out the previous year looked like that. And it was a big, big hit. It did really well. The cover had high impact. And so they thought, ooh, white with a big pop of color, that's what we're going to go for. And so the first ones that were kind of underwhelming were, there's a storyline involving the Audubon books and some other things. And so they tried a feather, and they tried a stack of books, and they tried an actual bookstore. And the other thing is there are a lot of books about bookstores out there. I'm a huge fan of them. And so I've read many of them, and it's hard to find that unique angle, that unique look. And I think they finally ultimately nailed it with just the nice, clean, clear, very colorful. There's a little shout out to the bird right there that kind of hints at things to come. So
yeah, absolutely.
I was very thrilled. I thought this is going to probably work. And then what happened? The other thing that happens is one premium thing that they do at my request, and I love that they do this, is that I get end papers, in a hardcover. These, these, So this was in the Oysterville Sewing Circle, and so I had these cool end papers in mind for the Lost and Found Bookshop. But guess what? They were designing the book. They were getting ready to manufacture it. We were having our conversations, and boom, everything shut down because it was like the middle of February when we were having these. Man. And so I ended up with no end papers in the Lost and Found Bookshop because, the printers, everybody had to go home.
Right.
Yeah, we couldn't even get you your complimentary copy, even though you're bringing me, on the air with you and everything, because it's so effortful anymore because everybody's home. My editor's home, my publicist is home. And so when we have our meetings, we're just like today, we're all over the place.
Right. All over the place online. So I just want to catch this real quick. Michelle said, definitely catches your eye. I'm an ex-librarian too. So it really caught my eye. Hey, Michelle, that's cool. I didn't know you were an ex-librarian.
I love that feedback. Thanks.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about what the papers would have looked like inside that cover. Would you have had books or birds?
I wanted birds. I wanted vintage birds because of the storyline involving the Audubon books. And so I was picturing kind of a really monochromatic sort of vintage bird look. And I don't know that they would have been able to do that, but they've done a lot of different looks. And so, it would have been nice, but unfortunately we all went home. And so I have just plain end papers, but I do love end papers. And when I was a child, it was always something about books that intrigued me, probably like a lot of readers and writers that I know. We're always kind of obsessed about not just the story itself, but the physical, the book in our hands and what the words look like on the page, and what the little, one nice thing that they were able to do were these interior pages they made. They kind of had the feather motif going, and this page with some nice kind of
pretty.
Yeah. And so the interiors, they did get designed before everybody had to go home. And so a big yes to these kind of interiors.
Yeah. At least you got some special. If you're listening on the podcast, obviously you need to buy the book so you can see these things yourself. Just some beautiful little design graphics on the inside pages of the book.
Well, I appreciate that about a book. I think there are readers who do. Others are like, who cares? Just give me the story.
Right. Right. I know. But I really do appreciate those. I love those. I do want to point out for you really quick here. We have a big fan of yours here. Sharon Carlson Person says she's been a big fan for years. So great to see you on these online events.
Oh, Sharon. Hi. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you stopping by. We never know how these things are going to go, and people have to come and go so quickly. So I appreciate you visiting me here and visiting Kerry here, because otherwise I think you're the first real person I've talked to all day.
Right. It's like, but that is one of the positive sides of this being home during COVID, is a lot of us are getting to see some of our famous favorite authors that we're all fangirly about, that normally we wouldn't get to, because maybe you'd be in a bookstore somewhere across the country and we couldn't come. But now that you're online, we get to meet and chat. So that's
true. Well, I would love to come someday to Auntie's Bookshop in Japan.
Yes, I did.
I've done bookstore, isn't it, out there?
It's beautiful. I've done a couple of signings there, as a matter of fact, and they're wonderful people. They're absolutely lovely. So, Susan, we need to talk about the book a little bit. So, first things first, you said you would very graciously read a couple of pages for us. So,
why don't we start there, and then you can kind of throw questions and my way. And I should say, for the writers who are among us, and maybe readers who are curious, I actually wrote, it's just a one-page prologue, but I think it's really strong. I hope it is. Because I didn't have a prologue. I just simply wrote chapter 1. And I felt like chapter 1 was strong, but I wanted the reader to have a little bit more of an emotional anchor into the story. And so I thought, well, what's the most emotional moment in the beginning of the story? And so unfortunately, it's a sad one, but I promise it gets better. Okay. Prologue. It is, the dateline says, The Flood Mansion, San Francisco. Standing before the gathering at her mother's memorial service, Natalie Harper glanced down at the podium. On the angled surface was a folder titled Resources for the Grieving, along with her notes. The guide was a compendium of advice, but there was one thing it failed to explain. How was she supposed to go on after this? Natalie had been carrying the pages around for days, hoping she'd somehow find an explanation for the inexplicable or a way to express the inexpressible. But all the notes and resources in the world failed to penetrate the unfinished narrative of her mother's life, which seemed to dangle in the thin air of Natalie's grief, just out of reach. The words shimmered in a wet blur before her eyes. She tried to remember what she meant to say, as if she could sum up Blythe Harper's life in a 3-minute speech. What did you say at your mother's final farewell? That she had been with you every minute of your life, from the second you took your first breath until a week ago when she had left it forever. That she was beautiful and inspiring, brilliant, but often foolish, quirky and infuriating, complicated and beloved. That she was everything: a mother, a daughter, a friend, a bookseller, a purveyor of dreams. And that at the moment Natalie needed her most, Blythe Harper had fallen from the sky.
Wow.
So, I wanted to throw us right into drama right there, and then pull back, and we sort of see the events that lead up to this moment. And boom, hopefully we're journeying along with Natalie. She's got nowhere to go but up, I would say.
Oh, poor Natalie. She, first off, that prologue, I really resonated with that. I had to give a speech at my mother's funeral, and how many of us have. And so,
it's so
really
hard, isn't it?
Right. How do you sum up? I tried when my father died long ago. I was writing poetry back then. I was going to write a poem, and I just ended up, all I could write was, you were too big to fit on I tried to write you a poem, but you were too big to fit on the page. And that was where I left it. We've had that experience, I think all of us. And so you,
the circle of life.
Yeah, you dragged us right in there. So here we are with Natalie. And then that little last sentence, the mystery, her mother fell from the sky. So then it's like, oh my goodness, what happened? And
I know. Well, and I wanted to trouble the reader a little bit. And I also wanted to suggest that there was some unfinished business, because Natalie's mid-30s, I guess, and she and her mom, were really, really close, but like lots of mothers and daughters, they did have their issues, and they didn't always see eye to eye on things. And mainly, they were diametrically opposed to one another. The mom, her name says it all. Her name was Blythe.
Perfect.
She was quirky, and she was bohemian, and she was a bit irresponsible. And Natalie's quest in life was to find solid ground, and to, she's got this kind of bean country, very, very stable job and lifestyle, and everything is sort of falling into place for her, except every once in a while she gets a little nudgy feeling that's like, is this really what my life is supposed to be? And so I love writing about people at a moment of profound change, whether it's forced on them or they go seeking it or something like that. I really felt like Natalie's journey was something that anybody could relate to.
Oh, absolutely. And she never would have set out on it on her own. So she had to be.
She needed a shove.
Yeah, sure. A very big shove, poor girl. Yeah. So, and we don't want to give everything away, so we won't talk about that too much. But let's talk about the bookshop. Where did you get the idea for this absolutely gorgeous, wonderful bookshop?
You know what? It's every writer I know has a secret fantasy. We want to have our own bookshop because it totally puts us in charge, or be librarians or something, because it kind of puts us in charge of the thing that we love, and have loved all our lives. And so there's no gratification that's quite like giving the right book to the right reader. I love it when I say, oh my gosh, you must read this book. And then, the feedback is, oh, that was the perfect thing for me to read at this time, whether it was for entertainment or enlightenment or healing or hope or whatever. And so I've always kept little bits and pieces of memory of all the bookstores that I love, starting with just, like a little hole in the wall bookstore in the town that where I was a very young child in upstate New York. And then we moved overseas. And so bookshops we lived in Brussels, and then we lived in Paris, and when I was all my growing up years. And so the bookshops just were alive to me. And my favorite, it won't surprise anybody who knows anything about Shakespeare and Company in Paris, that was my home away from home. I mean, I used to go to that when my friends would all go to the movies in the 70s. And so there's little bits and pieces of that. And so I kind of steal little pieces of the setting from different places and combine them all into this vintage, gorgeous building that's kind of, in trouble itself, falling down in San Francisco. But I always thought a bookshop needs character. And so what has better character than a vintage building in old San Francisco? So
right.
There you go.
And a bookstore that's literally and figuratively and in all the possible ways kind of falling down around Natalie's ears, which then enter, and I love the hammer for hire. We enter the need for somebody to help her try and put things back together.
Right.
So
She meets Peach, and that was a
Peach.
character who, I mean, he just popped out on the page. My husband renovates homes and he's a designer and he does many things, but his business partner in the renovation is this kind of hammer for hire with the tool belt and the nail bag and the big smelly truck and just everything that Peach is. And so I definitely thought, what do you need to help you sort out your falling apart life, but somebody who can fix things that fall apart. And then the other little piece that inspired the bookstore was that I had read that during the Philippine-American War, the Spanish-American War in the Philippines, they would ship out from San Francisco, and the soldiers who didn't happen to live there, they had no home there. And so if they had something they wanted to keep for, while they were away fighting in the Philippines, they would leave it in their favorite saloon. They would put it behind a brick. They would put it in a wall. They would kind of stash it away, intending to come back after their tour of duty was done. And this was something that I read about that was a thing. And so that's why, as they're taking apart the building to fix things in the walls, they start finding interesting artifacts, I guess.
Right.
And some are very ordinary artifacts, but others are very telling about families. And I think it really helped Natalie settle some things about her own emotions in her own life to kind of restore these lost treasures to people.
Right. And that was so wonderful. By the way, it's so fascinating just finding things in walls like that. There's an entire Facebook group, for those of you who don't know, that's called Things Found in Walls, I believe is actually the name of the group. Yes way. I joined it because I was just like, there's got to be book ideas in here. And it's just absolutely fascinating, the things that are found. Everything from really
writing that down.
Yeah, frightening sized dildo in the attic was one thing. It was like, oh my God, that's terrifying. And then just, other much more ordinary or interesting things and treasures and stuff. Very cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. That's good. Things found in walls.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. If that's not quite right, ping me and I will tell you what it really is.
I just found my husband took apart an old mirror that was in one of the properties that he acquired, and he just took it apart, and behind it was a perfectly preserved Toronto Star, the Toronto Daily Star from 1962. And it's just weird to look at the big headlines of the day, what was happening in the world, and the weird little phrases, and the advertisements are so strange. And my mom lives with me, my elderly mom. She's going to be 89 next month. And so it was kind of fun to be able to share some of those things with her, to kind of figure out, where were you, Mom, in 1962? What were you up to? And she could totally relate. She's like, yeah, we had those little hats. They had shells on them, and so it's really fun to find artifacts like that. And I think the everyday things are as fascinating as the treasures, but hopefully Natalie will find her treasure. We'll have to read to find out.
We will. And it is fascinating. We actually found when the Vikings' mother passed, we found under the stairs this old suitcase. And it was just filled with everything's from high school. There was this book where she kept every Valentine that was given to her and letters that were sent to her by suitors who were off at war.
Oh, that's amazing.
It is so cool. We just went through this stuff. What a treasure trove it is.
So have you had a book inspired by anything so far?
That was just recent, and I already had books in the works, so I haven't pulled that in, but that could happen yet.
Well, speaking of books in the works, we should pivot and tell us, give us a little thumbnail of your book, because you just had a book published.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity. I will. I actually have a cover.
Don't be shy.
Oh, I can't over.
Oh my God.
I thought I had it close. Okay. All right. My turn. A Borrowed Life by me, Kerry Ann King. Just came out last Tuesday. And if you're on the podcast, you have to look at the cover because they really nailed this one. I felt it's very gorgeous. So this in
feathers.
Yeah, I know. When they first started the feathers, I liked the idea, but I didn't like where they were going. You know, like you said, the feather on your book, it could work or not work, but they finally nailed it. So I was very excited about that. So so I actually wanted to talk about the grandfather in this story as well, and so lovely.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I had a lot of affection for that character.
Yeah.
Elderly. He lived his entire life in this building, because that was another part of my fantasy, is that there would be this garret-like, beautiful, light-filled vintage apartment above the bookshop, so that there's no commute. You know, you don't have to deal with Bay Area traffic or anything.
Right.
And so he, you know, it was his father's shop. His father was an apothecary. He became a typewriter repairman. Like my husband's grandfather was that. So that kind of suggested that. And then he and his daughter Blythe founded the bookstore together years and years ago. And so I wanted to build his entire personal history around this bookshop, and to give so much power to Natalie's drive to let him live out his days there, because he has dementia. He has some other very mysterious health issues that they can't quite figure out. And it's very distressing to her, probably more distressing to her than it is to him. And I've learned so much having my mom here. She has dementia.
Yeah.
And it's quite a... it's quite a wavy road. It's not a straight shot up, down, sideways. It's really just like a wavy road. And I really wanted to do honor to the journey that I'm on by showing a fictional journey that was also a wavy road, but letting you glimpse this character who'd had an amazing and full and fulfilling life, and the way that he's revived by the little girl in the story. There's, you know, what story doesn't need a little girl in it? And so, along comes Dorothy, who keeps him young and asks him very blunt, kid-like questions, you know, like, how does it feel to be demented? And
but it's so beautifully done. I love, sometimes I read characters with dementia, it doesn't ring true to me, and unless you have it or are around it a lot, how are you going to know? But I really do love the way that you let him keep his personality and his humanity, and the way he moves in and out of memory, and beautifully done.
Well, there's a book that I read a lot on the topic, obviously, but the one that really stuck with me has the quirkiest title. It's called Advice to Future Corpses by Sally. Gosh, now her name escapes me because dementia. Tisdale, Sally Tisdale. I had read an article, I think, in the New York Times, and then just randomly my agent mentioned the name to me. And so I looked up her book, and it's really a very grounded, she's a nurse and has been very experienced with dementia. And so it really resonated with me in a positive way, because it's definitely a life stage. It's something that you can't really get around it. It is what it is. But she had a really practical nurse-like way of going with the flow and embracing that and staying in the moment. And you really do learn to stop things and be in the moment with that person. And so I think the scenes that I did from his point of view were such a pleasure to write, because I felt like I was, trying to access the way that the world seemed to my mom sometimes.
Right. Well, and I believe you did a beautiful job. And I really did love being able to move in and out. And as a nurse, and, anything that I've learned, I really appreciated that his people learned to just be in the moment with him, because that's, I think when a lot of people with dementia get that panicked thing, they start getting anxious, and it's because we treat them like what they're experiencing isn't real. Well, it is real to them. That's their reality. So if we can just kind of join them there with the emotion that they're in,
that's very insightful. I think you mentioned you used to be a nurse and you've worked in mental health, and so
yeah, both
you
those
get
things.
it. You totally get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen, when it's handled well and when not so much. And I'm hoping that, when it's my turn to deal with anybody very close to me, that I will be able to handle it well. But it's so hard to see somebody slipping away from you, not to try and bring them back. So.
It is. I was grateful to be able to write about the different generations. We have Brandy, and then we have Blythe is sort of missing, as we know from the prologue, but she's sort of there in spirit. And then we have Natalie, and the little girl Dorothy comes along, and I feel like we got the circle of life in I hope a positive way. There's some true bittersweet moments there, but overall, I hope that it feels like a complete journey and a complete life.
Yeah, well, and it does. Those of you who are here listening, and if you've read already, you can chime in. But absolutely, it did. It started with very authentic grief, and then try and find your way out of that. And the way life, you need life to pull you forward, and so she had all those things. And then there's the surprises and the mysteries, and we're not going to talk about that because people have to read the book, and if they haven't, we don't want to spoil it. No spoilers, but I loved the spoilers. That was very cool. There's a grandmother, Colleen, and we're not going to talk about her a whole lot, but we know that she may have left something somewhere.
That's right.
We don't know what or where.
I almost wanted to write a whole novel about her. She was so interesting, and an Irish immigrant, and she comes to America, and find her history through the stories in the walls and the things left behind, and she had a whole journey of her own that I was very tempted to write, but I didn't have time to do a whole book about her. So the story is revealed through the artifacts in the walls. Right. But there is one thing, people can go to SusanWiggs.com and find the reading group guide. I think if you click on the book title, the reading group guide is one of the options, because the publisher produced a really nice one that has a list of all the books that I cited in the book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What does a bookseller do? She recommends books. And so the vast majority of books that are cited in the Lost and Found Bookshop are books that I've read, books that I've loved, everything from, total classics to new fiction by people that I just adore. And so my friends' books made their way into my book, and it was really fun to be able to do that. And to
and it was fun as a reader to see all the titles floating around, and it's like, me in my head, I'm like, ooh, I got to go look, and I got to look things up now. So that's
that was
cool.
fun.
Robin wants to know if maybe there should be a book too to deal with the whole Colleen situation and moving forward.
I have a teensy tidbit of news. I have a book that I'm working on now called Sugar and Salt. And if you go to, I don't know, the early pages, she starts bringing baked goods into her coffee, to the coffee bar of her bookshop. She gets it from the bakery across the street called Sugar. And so it turns out there's a very big story behind that. And so I wouldn't call it a sequel, more of a spinoff. And so we definitely will get to see Natalie in a cameo role, and catch up with her when Sugar and Salt is published.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So is that the next? What are you working on now? Can you talk about it?
I have a unique situation that kind of came up unexpectedly. I wrote a whole book, because that's all I do. If I'm not talking about a book, I'm writing a book. I wrote a whole book that had a variety of different titles, and I turned it in, and there's still not a title, but it's a very big book. And then I wrote, I don't know if this is too technical for readers, but I wrote a synopsis of the subsequent book, because the publisher always wants to know what you're working on. And I said, here's this whole book, and here's the synopsis of the book I'm going to start next. And my editor read both, and she said, this whole book is great, and it's going to be great, but I'm completely obsessed with the synopsis, and I need you to write that book, and maybe we'll have that one, be published first. So I'm actually working on that one as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway,
So
that's been my life. That's the writer's life.
that's
We
the
don't
writer's life, always writing the next book. Absolutely, which is awesome.
always
So
have.
you mentioned your website, and that's susanwiggs.com. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay. And where can people find you on social media, on Facebook and Instagram? And
I would say I'm most active on Instagram because I'm lazy. Too lazy to have like a big thoughtful post like you guys do. I mean, you're amazing to me. I love your site. I love all of your insights and everything. And I wish I had more time to do that. But yeah, so mostly Instagram, and of course I have a Facebook page with amazing, fantastic readers. If you want to see me like unplugged, it would be Twitter.
Twitter.
Political there. Yeah, if you're not fond of politics, then stay away from Twitter. But yeah. And then one of my favorite book sites, I hope more people will join, is called BookBub. Are you familiar with BookBub?
I love BookBub.
I love BookBub. There's something about it that is addictive to me. I find so many great book recommendations, and I always try to post my recommendations, what I'm reading, what I've liked, what I've enjoyed. So BookBub, I try to be really active on. Goodreads, of course, because it's required, Pinterest. So usually all of the channels. The ones that I'm not good with are Tumblr and Reddit. I'm like way too old. Way. I'm hoping they'll just go away. Somebody suggested TikTok, and I took one look at it, and I was like, no, not going there.
Well, and who has time for all of that when you're always writing another book,
Right.
anyways, right? I'm kind of a believer in pick a couple that you like and hang out there.
I love engaging with people, and we're so lucky because, gosh, when I first started out in 1987, there was no web. If I wanted to meet a real live reader, I went out in the world and maybe got lucky to meet one or two. And so it's so great to have this kind of exchange, and I so appreciate you giving us this forum.
Yeah, well, I love doing this. It's very fun because I get to meet people like you, and otherwise it wouldn't have happened, right? So
Yeah.
this is very cool. I thank you again for coming. Thank you.
Oh, Kerry, thank you. I'm looking forward to A Borrowed Life. I'm hoping that a copy will find its way into my inbox. And yeah. So everybody, the Lost and Found Bookshop,
Yep.
And A Borrowed Life. Whoops.
Okay. See, I'm falling down on my own. And A Borrowed Life by Kerry.
We both have feathers on the cover. It's
yes,
good luck.
we do. Meant to go together, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here today, readers, and hanging out with us. And for everybody who's watching and listening later, thanks again. I actually will be back again tomorrow. This is a special week. I have a twofer for you. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm interviewing Patty Dan about her book, The Wright Sister. And bad me, I didn't even know there was a Wright sister. I had no idea. So anyways, Patty has given her a book of her own, and that is very cool. So join us tomorrow for an interview with Patty, who is just awesome and fascinating. And I will let you all go and find your own books and read something today.
Thank you again.
Thanks again, Susan. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye for now.